A cattle ranch in Veracruz, Mexico. 3 in the morning. The night is warm and humid. A herd of about 40 cows is sleeping in a fenced pasture, lying down in the grass, breathing slowly in the dark. The animals are healthy, well-fed, valuable. The rancher who owns them has been working this land for 30 years. He knows each cow by name. He knows their weight, their breeding history, their value at auction. He has gone to bed 2 hours ago in the small house at the edge of the property. The dogs are quiet. The night is, by every external measure, completely ordinary. Above the pasture, a small dark shape is moving against the stars. It is silent. It is roughly the size of a sparrow. It has a wingspan of about 20 centimeters and a body weight of no more than 40 grams. It circles once, low, scanning the herd below with senses that are not visual in any normal sense. It is reading the landscape through heat, the warm bodies of the cows pulsing against the cooler air around them. Using specialized infrared sensors in the skin around its nose, it selects an animal. A young cow lying near the fence, breathing deeply, asleep. The shape descends. It does not land on the cow. Landing on a sleeping mammal would wake the animal and end the encounter. Instead, it lands almost silently on the ground beside the cow, a meter away. It folds its wings. It begins to walk. And here is where the first strange detail of this animal's biology becomes clear, because almost no other bat on Earth can walk. Most bats, removed from the air, are clumsy creatures that flop awkwardly when forced onto a flat surface. This one walks. It walks well. It walks on its strong hind legs and its folded wing thumbs in a coordinated four-limbed gait that resembles a spider more than a flying mammal, with a top running speed of nearly 8 kilometers per hour over short distances. It walks toward the cow. It approaches the animal's leg. It begins to climb. It climbs up onto the cow's lower flank, using the curved claws on its wing thumbs and feet, finding hairless or thinly furred patches of skin. The cow does not wake. The bat is too light. It weighs about as much as a slice of bread. The cow, weighing 400 kilograms, registers nothing. The bat positions itself near a vein it can feel through the skin. It opens its mouth. Its specialized incisor teeth, sharper than any other mammals, ground continuously against each other into surgical edges, make a small, precise cut roughly 3 millimeters across. The cow does not feel it. The bat's saliva contains an anesthetic compound that numbs the surrounding skin within seconds. The same saliva contains a powerful anticoagulant, a protein called draculin, which prevents the blood from clotting at the wound site. The cut bleeds freely, and the bat lowers its tongue into the flowing blood and begins to drink. It will drink for roughly 20 to 30 minutes. In that time, it will consume up to half its own body weight in blood. And when it is finished, it will become so heavy with the meal that it cannot fly under its own power. It will have to walk away from the cow, find a sheltered spot, and remain there for an hour or more while specialized kidney mechanisms rapidly process the liquid component of the blood and excrete it as urine. The bat may begin urinating before it has even finished feeding, jettisoning water from one end, while still ingesting blood from the other. Only after lightening itself this way can it lift off and return to its roost. The cow continues sleeping. The wound will keep bleeding for another 20 minutes after the bat departs, because the anticoagulant continues to work in the cow's bloodstream long after the bat has left. By morning, the cow will have a small dark patch of dried blood on its leg. The rancher, walking the fence at dawn, may or may not notice. If he does, he will recognize the sign immediately. Every rancher in this part of Mexico does. He will mark the cow for examination. The disease the bat may have transmitted is what concerns him, far more than the small volume of blood lost. This is the common vampire bat, Desmodus rotundus, one of the only mammals on Earth that consumes nothing but blood for its entire adult life. Now move 5,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean, to a different continent, to a different ecosystem, to a different evolutionary lineage entirely. Wolf Island, in the northern Galapagos archipelago. Mid-morning. The island is a small volcanic outcrop, barely 2 square kilometers in size, almost entirely uninhabited by humans, surrounded by hundreds of kilometers of open ocean in every direction. The vegetation is sparse, low scrub, a few cactus, dry grass. The fauna is limited. The island is too small and too isolated to support most of the kinds of animals found in the larger Galapagos Islands. But it is densely populated by seabirds. Nazca boobies, in particular, breed here in large colonies. Adult Nazca boobies are striking white birds with black wingtips, weighing about 2 kilograms each. They sit on the ground in their nesting areas, wings folded, occasionally tending to chicks or eggs. They are at the top of their local food chain. They have no terrestrial predators on this island. A small dark bird hops down beside one of the boobies. It is a finch, recognizably a finch with the strong conical beak and stocky body of the Galapagos finches that Darwin documented during his visit in the 1830s. It is roughly the size of a sparrow. It has dull brown plumage. It does not appear to be doing anything unusual at first. It hops closer to the booby. It pecks at the ground near the booby's tail feathers, as if foraging for insects. Then it pecks at the booby itself. It pecks at the base of the booby's tail feathers, the base of the rectrices, where the feathers emerge from the skin, and it pecks hard enough to draw blood. The booby flinches, but does not move. The finch pecks again. The booby still does not move. Within a few seconds, blood is welling from the puncture in the booby's skin, and the finch is drinking it, methodically, deliberately. The finch is not attempting to eat the booby. The finch is not trying to wound it severely. The finch is simply drinking its blood the same way another bird might drink water from a puddle. This is the vampire finch, Geospiza septentrionalis, one of the only birds on Earth that drinks blood as a regular part of its diet. 2 animals, 2 continents, 2 lineages with no recent common ancestor relevant to this behavior. The bat is a placental mammal whose ancestors evolved blood-feeding tens of millions of years ago in the New World tropics. The finch is a passerine bird whose ancestors arrived on a remote oceanic island a few million years ago and developed the behavior in geographic isolation. Both animals consume blood. Both have rewritten their digestive physiology, their behavior, and parts of their sensory systems to make it work. And both arrived at the strategy through completely independent evolutionary paths, solving the same nutritional puzzle with completely different equipment. This is the story of how blood drinking evolved twice, in lineages that never met, on opposite sides of the world. Start with the basic problem. Why drink blood at all? Blood is a nutritionally peculiar resource. It is approximately 78% water. It contains some protein, mostly in the form of hemoglobin and serum proteins. It contains a small amount of fat. It contains very little carbohydrate. It is rich in iron, sodium, and a few other minerals. By volume, it is mostly water. By calorie density, it is one of the poorest foods an animal can consume. A predator that eats meat, actual muscle tissue, gets several times the energy per gram. A frugivoror that eats fruit gets more sugar. A seed eater gets more fat and starch. Blood, on its own, is a thin meal. But blood has one enormous advantage. It is reliably available. It is produced continuously by every vertebrate animal on Earth, in vast quantities, circulating through accessible blood vessels just under the skin. A specialist that evolves the equipment to access it has tapped into a resource pool that effectively never runs out. Where there are warm-blooded animals, there is blood. The supply is renewed every hour by every host animal's own metabolism. The challenge is purely mechanical and chemical. How to access the blood, how to keep it flowing, how to digest it, and how to deal with the metabolic problems that pure blood creates. Both the vampire bat and the vampire finch have, in their own ways, solved every part of this puzzle. Look first at the vampire bat in detail, because the engineering of this animal is more thorough than almost any other parasitic specialist in the mammalian world. The teeth come first. Vampire bats have specialized upper incisors that are continuously sharpened against each other through normal mouth movements, like razor blades being stropped throughout the bat's life. The cutting edge of these teeth is so fine that the cut they produce is essentially painless and nearly invisible to the host. The bat can also extract a small section of skin in a single bite if needed, removing the obstruction without producing the kind of pain response that would wake a sleeping animal. The shape of the dental arch is unique among bats. Most bats have teeth optimized for crushing insects, but vampire bats have a dentition oriented entirely around precision incision. Then the saliva. Vampire bat saliva contains at least 3 biologically active compounds that are unique or extraordinary in the mammalian world. The first is the anesthetic, which numbs the wound site within seconds and prevents the host from feeling the cut. The second is draculin, named directly for the bat's vampiric biology, a powerful anticoagulant protein that prevents clotting at the wound for far longer than the bat is actually feeding. The third is a vasodilator that keeps the small blood vessels around the wound dilated, ensuring a continued flow even as the body's normal repair mechanisms attempt to constrict them. The combination is so effective that medical researchers have studied draculin extensively as a potential drug for treating stroke patients, preventing clots in human blood vessels using a protein originally evolved to keep cattle bleeding. Then the digestive system. A diet of pure blood creates 2 enormous physiological problems. The first is volume. Blood is mostly water, and the bat must consume large volumes to extract enough nutrition. The kidneys are correspondingly enormous for the bat's body size, and they work at extraordinary speed during and immediately after a meal. A vampire bat can begin processing the water content of its meal so rapidly that it is urinating while still feeding, jettisoning fluid as fast as the digestive tract can absorb it. The second problem is iron. Blood contains very high levels of iron, which is toxic in large doses. The bat's intestinal tract has evolved a specialized population of gut bacteria that bind and inactivate excess iron, and the bat's liver has unusually robust iron-handling enzymes. These adaptations allow it to consume the equivalent of a heavy iron supplement every night for its entire life without poisoning itself. Then the social system, which is one of the most surprising features of vampire bat biology. A vampire bat will starve to death within roughly 70 hours if it cannot find a meal. This is much faster than most mammals starve. The reason is that the bat's nutrient reserves are already minimal. Blood does not provide enough caloric density to build large fat stores, so the animal lives meal to meal. On any given night, a substantial fraction of a vampire bat colony fails to find a host. Without intervention, those individuals would die. What happens instead is one of the most well-documented examples of reciprocal altruism in any non-human species. Vampire bats that have fed successfully will, upon returning to the roost, regurgitate a portion of their meal directly into the mouths of roost mates that did not eat. The recipients are not always close relatives. Often they are bats with whom the donor has a long-standing reciprocal relationship. Bats that have fed her in past nights when she was the one returning empty. The system has been studied extensively in laboratory and wild colonies, and it shows the hallmarks of genuine cooperative behavior. Bats remember individuals who have helped them. Bats are more likely to share with individuals who have shared with them in the past. Bats track these relationships across months and years. Without this food-sharing system, the species could not exist in its current form. The metabolic constraints of blood feeding make solo survival too risky. The cooperation makes the lifestyle viable. A vampire bat is not just a blood-feeding specialist. It is a social blood-feeding specialist whose entire ecology depends on the willingness of unrelated individuals to share food in repeating cycles of obligation. For anyone still watching at this point, the kind of viewer who is here for the deeper biology, the actual mechanisms behind animals that solve problems no one else solves. The rest of what has been compiled for this channel is in the pinned comment below, longer episodes, deeper dissections of the strangest evolutionary strategies in nature, organized in one place, no interruption to the script, just there for the ones still paying attention. Now look at the vampire finch, because the contrast with the bat is profound. The vampire finch is a small passerine bird, a member of Darwin's finches, the famous group whose beak diversification helped define the modern theory of adaptive radiation. The finches arrived in the Galapagos several million years ago, descendants of a single founding population from mainland South America. On the larger Galapagos Islands, they diversified into more than a dozen species, each specialized for different food sources. Cactus seeds, hard nuts, insects, tree bark. Each finch species evolved a beak shaped for its particular ecological niche. On the smallest, most remote islands of the Galapagos, Wolf Island and Darwin Island, both far north of the main archipelago, the conditions were different. These islands are tiny, dry, and have very few resources. Insects are scarce, plants are stunted. Fresh water is essentially absent for much of the year. A finch surviving on Wolf Island had to find food where almost no other land bird could. The seabirds were the resource. Nazca boobies and red-footed boobies nest on Wolf and Darwin Islands in large colonies, occupying the island's surface area and depositing eggs, chicks, and adults all over the available terrain. They eat fish at sea and bring nutrients onto the land in their bodies. To a finch evolving in a resource-poor environment, the seabirds represented an enormous, untapped food supply, if the finch could find a way to access it. The vampire finch found multiple ways. It eats booby eggs, sometimes rolling them off cliffs to break them open. It eats young boobies that die in the nests. It eats parasites and skin flakes off live boobies in something resembling cleaning behavior. And when other resources fail, it pecks at the boobies' skin and drinks their blood directly. The blood feeding does not appear to have evolved as the primary strategy. It evolved as one of several backup strategies, available when other food was unavailable. But on Wolf Island, where conditions are harshest, the blood feeding is performed regularly by significant portions of the finch population. During dry seasons or food shortages, it can become the primary source of liquid and nutrition for individual finches. The mechanism is much simpler than the vampire bats. The finch has no anesthetic, it has no anticoagulant, it has no specialized digestive system for processing blood. It simply pecks hard enough to draw blood and drinks what flows. The boobies, for reasons that are still not fully understood, mostly tolerate it. They occasionally peck back. They occasionally move away, but many individual boobies stand quietly while finches drink from them, allowing the behavior in a way that suggests either the boobies cannot effectively defend themselves, or the cost is low enough that resistance would be more expensive than tolerance, or possibly both. This tolerance is one of the strangest features of the system, and it has not been satisfyingly explained by current research. One hypothesis is that the finch's ancestral relationship with the boobies began as cleaning behavior. Finches removing parasites and dead skin from booby plumage, which would have been beneficial to the boobies and selected for tolerance of the finch's presence. Over evolutionary time, the finches escalated from removing skin flakes to drawing blood. But the boobies' instinctive tolerance of small birds in close contact with their bodies persisted. The behavior would then be a case of an originally mutualistic relationship sliding into parasitism, with the host species not yet having evolved the defenses that would normally appear when a benign behavior turns harmful. Whatever the explanation, the result is observable. On any given day during the dry season on Wolf Island, multiple Nazca boobies can be seen with finches drinking from wounds at the base of their tail feathers, tolerating the behavior with apparent indifference. Now compare the two systems side by side. The vampire bat has evolved an extensive suite of physical and physiological adaptations to its diet, specialized teeth, complex saliva chemistry, modified kidneys, gut bacteria for handling iron, social cooperation for survival between meals. It is a fully obligate blood feeder. It cannot survive on any other diet. Its entire body and behavior have been reshaped by tens of millions of years of evolutionary refinement around this single food source. The vampire finch has evolved almost no specialized physical adaptations. Its beak is a regular Galapagos finch beak, slightly stronger than some related species, but not visibly modified for blood feeding. Its digestive system is a regular passerine digestive system. It does not produce anesthetics, anticoagulants, or specialized blood-handling chemistry. It is not an obligate blood feeder. It eats seeds, insects, and seabird eggs as well. Blood drinking is one of several food sources, used opportunistically when conditions favor it. The finch is, at most, a few million years into the development of this strategy, and its adaptations are still primarily behavioral rather than anatomical. In other words, the two animals represent two different stages of the same evolutionary process. The vampire bat shows what blood feeding looks like after tens of millions of years of refinement. The vampire finch shows what it looks like in the early stages before the lineage has had time to specialize anatomically. If the vampire finch lineage continues for another 20 or 30 million years on isolated islands with this diet, its descendants might eventually look something like a small bird version of a vampire bat, with specialized beak edges, anticoagulant saliva, modified digestion. Or the lineage might never reach that level of specialization because the resource base is too small and the population is too constrained on a 2 square kilometer island to support that kind of refinement. There is a broader lesson in this comparison. Evolution, when it finds a viable food source, will produce specialists to exploit it. The specialists do not have to share ancestry. They do not have to share continents. They do not have to share body plans. The evolutionary pressure toward exploiting available resources is so reliable that completely different lineages, separated by hundreds of millions of years of independent history, will arrive at the same general strategy. The execution will differ, the chemistry will differ, the social systems will differ, but the underlying logic, find a renewable resource, build the equipment to access it, refine the behaviors that exploit it, converges across the entire animal kingdom. The vampire bat and the vampire finch are not unique in this. There are blood-feeding insects, blood-feeding fish, blood-feeding leeches, blood-feeding worms. The strategy has been independently invented in multiple animal phyla, on every continent, in every major ecosystem. What makes the bat and the finch particularly interesting is that they are warm-blooded vertebrates, the same evolutionary class as the animals they feed on, performing a behavior that is far more common in distantly related invertebrates. They are exceptions to a pattern, drawn into it by the same logic that drew everything else. Return now to the Veracruz pasture in the warm Mexican night. The vampire bat has finished feeding. It has lightened itself enough through rapid urination to take flight. It lifts off, heavy but airborne, and flies back toward its roost in a hollow tree several kilometers away. It will land near the entrance, walk inside on its strange four-limbed gait, and locate the roost mates it has fed before in past weeks. If any of them return tonight without food, this bat will share part of its meal with them. The reciprocity will be remembered. The relationship will continue. In the same hour, on the other side of the world, the vampire finch on Wolf Island is finishing its last meal of the day. The booby it fed on has not moved during the entire encounter. The wound is small. It will heal in a day or two. The finch flies a short distance to a small, thorny shrub, the only kind of vegetation Wolf Island offers, and roosts there for the rapidly approaching tropical night. Tomorrow it will eat again. Maybe seeds, maybe insects, maybe more blood. 2 animals, 2 continents. Same strategy, different equipment. The bat has spent tens of millions of years becoming what it is. The finch has spent perhaps a few million. Both are doing the same thing, accessing a nearly limitless resource by overcoming the relatively simple problem of getting through skin and into the bloodstream of a larger animal that does not particularly want them there. The strategies that evolved are different in every detail. The result is the same. Blood is consumed, energy is extracted, the animal lives another day. In every ecosystem on Earth, similar stories are running. Lineages with no shared history finding the same solutions. Continents apart, body plans apart, chemistries apart. The same evolutionary puzzles, producing the same general answers in different ways. The vampire bat and the vampire finch are 2 windows onto a much larger pattern, and the pattern is still being filled in. Every few decades, biologists discover another lineage that has independently evolved the same strategy. The list of blood-feeding animals continues to grow. The convergence continues to be documented. The cow goes back to sleep. The booby returns to its egg. The bat returns to its roost. The finch returns to its shrub. And somewhere else, on another continent, in another ecosystem, another animal is preparing to do the same thing for the first time in its species' evolutionary history.